Life often unfolds in ways we do not anticipate. There are paths we are drawn to, connections we form, and experiences that seem fated, inevitable, or beyond our comprehension. And sometimes, in the quiet corners of our awareness, we begin to sense a pattern, a subtle, persistent pull toward a dynamic that tests, challenges, and reshapes us. For some, this path leads to encounters with narcissists, individuals whose world revolves around themselves, whose emotional landscapes are centered on control, admiration, and validation, and whose presence, while alluring at first, gradually exposes a vacuum of empathy. And the truth is, when you are meant for a narcissist's life, the revelation of this dynamic can be startling, even shocking, because it reveals dimensions of existence, human behavior, and self-discovery that were previously unseen. When you are drawn into a narcissist's life, it is not merely a matter of circumstance. It is a reflection of unseen energies, of lessons yet to be learned, and of boundaries yet to be defined. The narcissist presents a mirror, though often distorted, reflecting aspects of yourself that are dormant, hidden, or unresolved. They bring into focus your empathy, your generosity, your patience, and your capacity for love. They also illuminate your vulnerabilities, your blind spots, and the areas in which you unconsciously seek validation. This is the first shock, the realization that you have been cast into a world where your gifts are both tested and exploited, where your energy is drawn into a system designed to feed another's ego rather than nourish mutual growth. At first, the relationship may appear intoxicating. The narcissist often presents themselves with charm, charisma, and a seeming depth of understanding. They know precisely how to engage your empathy, how to appeal to your sense of connection, and how to make you feel seen, appreciated, and necessary. You are drawn into their orbit not because of weakness, but because your sensitivity and awareness naturally respond to the subtle cues of their need for validation. Your presence ignites their sense of importance, their identity, and their feeling of control. And here lies the paradox. Your gifts, which are noble, profound, and compassionate, become the very instruments that sustain their illusion of strength. As time progresses, the subtle dynamics begin to shift. The initial charm is replaced with demands, expectations, and subtle manipulations. Emotional highs and lows become cycles that test your resilience, your boundaries, and your understanding of yourself. The narcissist thrives in these cycles, drawing energy, attention, and control from your engagement. They are masters of creating illusions, of bending perception, and of masking insecurity behind dominance. For the empath, or the sensitive soul caught in this life, the experience can be disorienting. The shock lies in the realization that the person who once seemed radiant and compelling is also profoundly fragile, dependent, and self-centered. Their need for control is not an anomaly. It is a structural feature of their being. The second shock comes when you recognize your own role in this dynamic. Often, those who are drawn into a narcissist's life possess qualities of generosity, patience, and emotional acuity that are rare. You are capable of perceiving subtleties, of nurturing without immediate return, and of giving love in ways that require maturity and understanding. Yet, in the presence of a narcissist, these qualities are tested, stretched, and sometimes exploited. You come to see that your empathy, which has been a source of strength and beauty, can also be appropriated. The realization that your energy has been sustaining another's illusions can be profoundly disconcerting. It challenges your understanding of self-worth, reciprocity, and the boundaries of love. Here is the ultimate truth that shocks those who are meant for a narcissist's life. The experience is not merely about the other person. It is about you. It is about the awakening of consciousness, the recognition of patterns, and the discovery of inner strength. The narcissist acts as a catalyst, forcing you to confront aspects of yourself you may have ignored. Your tendency to overgive, your desire for approval, your limits in discerning manipulation, and the areas in which your boundaries have been compromised. The shock lies not in their behavior alone, but in the realization that this life, with all its challenges, has been designed to illuminate your own power, resilience, and capacity for self-awareness. It is also shocking because the narcissist's world operates under different rules. Their perception of love, connection, and empathy is transactional. Their emotional expression is often strategic, aimed at maintaining influence rather than cultivating mutual growth. Their charm, care, and occasional generosity are not entirely absent of authenticity, but they are invariably entangled with the desire for control. To those meant for a narcissist's life, the recognition of this transactional reality is unsettling. It challenges fundamental assumptions about intimacy, trust, and reciprocity. And yet, this recognition is essential because it is only through understanding the true nature of the dynamic that liberation, clarity, and self-empowerment can emerge. The empath's response, or the sensitive soul's response, becomes central to the unfolding of this journey. Initially, there may be confusion, self-doubt, or attempts to reconcile the contradictions inherent in the narcissist's behavior. You may ask yourself, am I overreacting? Is this really the truth? Can this relationship change? These questions are natural and necessary, for they reflect the process of discerning reality from illusion. But over time, the truth becomes undeniable. Your energy, attention, and emotional labor are sustaining a life that is not balanced, reciprocated, or mutually nourishing. The shock is intensified by the awareness that your gifts, while profound, cannot fundamentally change the nature of the narcissist. You cannot fill the void they were born into, nor can you provide the validation they continuously seek. Here is the profound teaching embedded in the shock. Being meant for a narcissist's life is not punishment, nor is it failure. It is a crucible, a sacred arena in which your awareness, strength, and boundaries are tested and forged. It is a life that demands deep self-reflection, courage, and discernment. The shock arises because the truth, that you are both essential and exploited, needed and drained, valued and misunderstood, challenges every assumption about connection, love, and influence. And yet, from this crucible, you emerge stronger, wiser, and more attuned to the principles of conscious living. The narcissist's life and your placement within it also reveals the power of absence. When your energy is no longer available, when your attention is consciously withdrawn, the dynamics shift. The narcissist, dependent on your presence, experiences disruption, confusion, and the cracking of illusions. This is one of the most shocking truths. The realization that your power was never in confrontation, manipulation, or argument, but in your presence, your energy, and your boundaries. By choosing to honor yourself, you reveal the fragility of borrowed control, the limits of transactional influence, and the consequences of dependency. Moreover, the experience illuminates a deeper spiritual truth. Life orchestrates relationships, challenges, and encounters not to diminish us, but to awaken consciousness. The narcissist's life, with all its intensity, mirrors hidden aspects of your own psyche, patterns of behavior, and areas of personal growth. The shock is in recognizing that what seemed unfair, overwhelming, or painful is, in fact, a teacher. The narcissist is simultaneously a mirror, a challenge, and a catalyst for transformation. Your awakening comes not from changing them, but from understanding yourself, your boundaries, and the sacredness of your energy. As you walk this path, the realization that you are meant for this life brings both shock and clarity. The shock arises from the intensity of the experience, the manipulation, the cycles of charm and depletion, and the recognition of how your energy has been used. The clarity emerges when you see the patterns, reclaim your boundaries, and honor your own presence. The narcissist's life, with all its challenges, becomes a teacher, and the truth you uncover is profoundly liberating. Your power lies in awareness, self-respect, and the conscious choice to engage or withdraw. Ultimately, being meant for a narcissist's life is a call to mastery. It is an invitation to recognize the subtle dynamics of energy, attention, and influence. It is a challenge to discern truth from illusion, to honor your own boundaries, and to cultivate presence and integrity. The shock of this realization is intense because it disrupts assumptions, exposes vulnerabilities, and challenges deeply held beliefs. And yet, It is precisely this disruption that creates the opportunity for transformation, growth, and liberation. When the truth fully dawns, it is shocking, undeniable, and ultimately empowering. You see that your life, your gifts, and your presence have been essential, not to feed the narcissist's ego, but to illuminate your own strength, wisdom, and capacity for discernment. You realize that the dynamics were never a reflection of your inadequacy, but a reflection of energy patterns, human behavior, and the lessons life designed for your awakening. And in this truth, the shock transforms into understanding, the pain transforms into clarity, and the experience transforms into mastery. Being meant for a narcissist's life is a profound journey, a sacred test, and a mirror of consciousness. The shock lies not in suffering, but in revelation. The truth of dynamics, energy, and human behavior emerges with clarity, leaving no space for illusion. Your presence, awareness, and boundaries become the tools of empowerment. The narcissist's life, while challenging, becomes a canvas for awakening. And when the shock is fully embraced, you step into a life of clarity, self-respect, and conscious mastery. The ultimate reward of a journey once shrouded in confusion. To understand the truth of being meant for a narcissist's life, one must first recognize the subtle currents of energy, intention, and perception that define such a path. Life has a way of placing us in experiences that are simultaneously challenging and illuminating. When a narcissist enters your orbit, they do not appear as a villain at first. Instead, they arrive cloaked in charm, magnetism, and charisma. They awaken admiration, intrigue, and even a sense of destiny within you. You are drawn to them, not because you are naive or weak, but because your sensitivity and awareness naturally respond to the intensity and presence they exude. And yet this is the beginning of the journey, the first stage in a process that will reveal deep truths, confront hidden vulnerabilities, and ultimately awaken your consciousness. At the onset, life with a narcissist can feel intoxicating. They know how to make you feel special, needed, and valued. The attention they give is meticulous, purposeful, and strategic. Every word, every gesture, every glance is designed to captivate, charm, and ensnare. They are masters of perception, able to present an image that seems authentic, desirable, and magnetic. For those drawn into their lives, it is almost impossible to see beyond the allure. And here is the first truth. Being meant for a narcissist's life does not imply weakness. It implies sensitivity, depth, and a capacity for understanding that is rare and precious. Your presence ignites something within them, and their attention awakens aspects of your own self-awareness that may have been dormant. Yet beneath the charm lies a pattern. The narcissist's attention is conditional, their affection strategic, and their care transactional. Over time, the initial warmth begins to shift into subtle control, manipulation, and emotional turbulence. The highs and lows become cycles, repeating patterns that test your boundaries, your perception, and your resilience. You may find yourself questioning your own judgments, doubting your perception, and wrestling with confusion. This is where the shock begins. The realization that someone who seemed vibrant and enchanting can also be profoundly self-centered, emotionally manipulative, and incapable of mutual reciprocity. The second truth, which often strikes with even greater force, is the recognition of your own role within this dynamic. The narcissist's influence thrives because of your generosity, patience, and emotional acuity, your empathy, your capacity for understanding, and your willingness to see beyond surface behavior all become elements in the sustenance of their illusion of strength. The shock emerges when you see that your gifts, qualities you once viewed as virtuous and noble, have been both essential to their world and exploited by it. This awareness does not diminish your value, rather, it illuminates the invisible mechanisms of energy exchange, control, and influence that operate within human relationships. Being meant for a narcissist's life forces you to confront fundamental questions about love, boundaries, and self-respect. How much of your energy can you give without being depleted? How much of your compassion can be shared without being exploited? Where do you draw the line between care and self-preservation? These questions arise not as a critique of your character, but as a mirror of reality. In their presence, you are compelled to define yourself, articulate your boundaries, and reclaim the sacredness of your energy. And the shock is that these realizations often come through challenge, struggle, and emotional intensity. One of the most profound lessons embedded in being meant for a narcissist's life is the recognition of impermanence and projection. The narcissist's sense of self is often fragile, constructed upon external validation and maintained through manipulation. Their perception of reality, while compelling, is frequently skewed, self-referential, and transactional. They mirror back only what serves their narrative, leaving gaps, distortions, and illusions that must be navigated carefully. You begin to understand that their reality is not your reality, that their perception is filtered through need rather than clarity, and that their love, attention, or care is conditional upon your compliance with their expectations. The shock lies in the subtlety of this realization. It is not abrupt, but it is transformative. In this life, you are called not only to witness their patterns, but to awaken your own consciousness. The narcissist functions as both mirror and catalyst. They reflect the hidden tendencies within yourself, your desire for approval, your inclination to overgive, your blind spots in discerning manipulation, and the areas where boundaries have been weak or undefined. At the same time, they challenge you to cultivate discernment, self-respect, and mastery over your own energy. The shock is dual. It is the recognition of their dependency on you and the awareness of your capacity to reclaim your own power. Another layer of shock comes with the understanding that control and influence are illusions maintained through subtle energy dynamics. The narcissist's perceived dominance is not inherent. It is borrowed from your engagement, attention, and presence. When you are fully present, attentive, and invested, their influence appears absolute. When you withdraw, disengage, or assert boundaries, the illusion shatters. Their vulnerability becomes visible. Their reliance on external validation is revealed, and the fragility of their identity emerges. You learn that the true power does not lie in confrontation, argument, or force, but in the conscious stewardship of your own energy. Being meant for a narcissist's life also brings the shock of recognizing the sacredness of absence. Withdrawal is not abandonment, it is reclamation. By stepping away, you do not punish, shame, or retaliate. You restore balance, protect your energy, and demonstrate the inescapable truth of boundaries. The narcissist, deprived of the sustenance they have relied upon, faces disruption, confusion, and subtle unraveling. The shock is not in the act itself, but in the realization that your presence was a force more powerful than manipulation, more influential than control, and more enduring than the illusions of dominance. This path teaches the ultimate lesson of mastery, that true strength lies in awareness, presence, and discernment. Love, attention, and empathy are sacred forces, not obligations to be exploited. Energy flows where it is honored and withdraws where it is unappreciated. Being meant for a narcissist's life is shocking precisely because it upends assumptions about connection, trust, and reciprocity. It forces confrontation with reality, challenges habitual patterns, and illuminates the necessity of conscious living. Through this experience, you are called to awaken, reclaim, and redefine your presence in the world. The emotional intensity of this life is undeniable. Confusion, frustration, and cycles of charm and manipulation are the crucible in which your self-awareness, resilience, and inner power are forged. The shock lies in the realization that no matter how much you give, how much you understand, or how deeply you empathize, you cannot fundamentally alter the narcissist's nature. They are constrained by the limits of their own awareness, the architecture of their ego, and the patterns they have internalized. Your journey, therefore, is not about changing them. It is about understanding yourself, asserting your boundaries, and preserving your energy. Ultimately, the truth that shocks those meant for a narcissist's life is liberating. You recognize that your gifts, empathy, patience, discernment, and energy are powerful, sacred, and not to be taken for granted. You understand that presence is a form of influence, boundaries are a source of strength, and conscious withdrawal is a declaration of mastery. The narcissist's life, with all its intensity, becomes a mirror for your awakening, a catalyst for growth, and a teacher of truths that are profound, subtle, and transformative. And in the end, when the shock settles into clarity, you see that this life was never about diminishing you, controlling you, or testing your limits without purpose. It was about illuminating your own strength, awakening your awareness, and teaching you the sacredness of energy, the power of boundaries, and the mastery of presence. The truth is shocking, yes, but it is also liberating, empowering, and deeply transformative. You were meant for this path not to be trapped, but to awaken, not to suffer, but to master, not to lose yourself, but to find the unshakable, luminous self that exists within you. There is a quiet intensity in life that draws certain souls toward experiences meant to awaken them, test them, and illuminate the hidden layers of their consciousness. When you are meant for a narcissist life, the truth that awaits you is profound, transformative, and often shocking. This is not a life of punishment, nor one of mere coincidence. It is a path orchestrated in subtle and intricate ways, designed to expose your gifts, confront your boundaries, and ultimately reveal the depth of your own power. The narcissist becomes a catalyst, a mirror, and a teacher, though not in the ways one might conventionally understand. They reveal what is hidden, distort what is apparent, and challenge the very foundations of your understanding of connection, influence, and self-respect. At first, the experience is intoxicating. The narcissist presents a world of charm, fascination, and magnetism. They know instinctively how to appeal to your curiosity, to your sensitivity, and to your desire for connection. Their energy draws you in, like the stillness of water before a storm, gentle yet compelling, enveloping yet commanding. In this initial phase, the shock is subtle. The realization that someone so captivating can simultaneously hold intentions and patterns that are self-serving, calculated, and emotionally consuming. Your perception is awakened, your awareness sharpened, yet your energy is unknowingly being entangled in a dynamic that is not balanced, reciprocal, or nourishing. As time unfolds, the subtle layers of the narcissist's life reveal themselves. Charm gives way to manipulation, fascination becomes cycles of expectation, inconsistency, and emotional turbulence. You begin to notice patterns, the selective attention, the carefully calculated gestures of care, and the pervasive need for validation that seems never-ending. Here, the shock deepens. The realization that the world presented to you, so vibrant and alluring, is also a system designed to draw energy from you while offering little in return. This is the second layer of awakening, a recognition that the gifts you bring, empathy, patience, and understanding, are simultaneously powerful and vulnerable, essential and exploitable. Being meant for a narcissist's life forces a confrontation with yourself that is often startling. You must examine your own tendencies, your blind spots, and the areas in which you unconsciously allow your energy to be borrowed, used, or depleted. The narcissist acts as a mirror, reflecting the parts of yourself that need attention. Your desire for approval, your willingness to overgive, your hesitation to assert boundaries. The shock lies in recognizing that the challenge is not merely external but deeply internal. The relationship becomes a training ground for discernment, resilience, and mastery of your own energy. You are being tested not to punish you, but to awaken the dormant aspects of your consciousness that have long waited for recognition. One of the most disorienting revelations is the transactional nature of narcissistic attention. You come to see that what initially seemed like love, care, or intimacy is often contingent, given only when it serves a purpose, withdrawn when it does not. The highs are intense, the attention intoxicating, and the warmth compelling. Yet the lows, the absence, and the manipulation are equally deliberate. This oscillation is the crucible in which you learn the true nature of influence and power. It is not derived from coercion or argument, but from presence, energy, and the conscious decision to engage or withdraw. The shock, therefore, is both in the behavior of the narcissist and in your realization of how power, attention, and energy operate in subtle yet profound ways. As the relationship deepens, the narcissist's fragility becomes apparent. Their sense of self is largely externalized, dependent upon admiration, validation, and the emotional labor of those around them. They project strength, confidence, and control, yet these are illusions sustained by borrowed energy. When you begin to perceive the patterns clearly, when you see that their influence depends on your engagement, your attention, and your generosity, the shock intensifies. You realize that the power they seem to wield so effortlessly is in fact contingent upon your presence, and that your energy is the sustaining force behind their identity. This realization is profound, for it highlights the sacredness of absence. The narcissist's life is disrupted when you choose to assert boundaries, to withdraw your attention, or to disengage from manipulation. Your absence is not an act of revenge nor a punishment. It is a conscious reclamation of energy, a restoration of balance, and a demonstration of the law that governs human relationships. Energy cannot be taken for granted, influence cannot be forced, and respect is conditional. The shock lies in witnessing the disruption that occurs simply because you honor your own presence. You come to understand that your power lies not in confrontation, argument, or coercion, but in awareness, clarity, and conscious withdrawal. Being meant for a narcissist's life also reveals the profound duality of empathy. Your ability to perceive, understand, and nurture is both a gift and a vulnerability. It allows you to sense the subtleties of human behavior, to anticipate needs, and to create harmony. Yet, when placed in the orbit of a narcissist, this gift becomes a tool for sustaining their illusions. The shock is in recognizing that the very qualities that make you extraordinary, your sensitivity, your patience, and your insight, are simultaneously the aspects most at risk of exploitation. This awareness forces a deeper understanding of self-preservation, boundaries, and the conscious allocation of energy. There is also a spiritual dimension to this awakening. Life orchestrates relationships, challenges, and experiences to illuminate consciousness. Being meant for a narcissist's life is a call to deeper self-reflection, inner alignment, and mastery of presence. The narcissist is not merely a character in your life, they are a mirror, a teacher, and a catalyst for awakening. Their patterns reveal what is hidden within you, tendencies toward overgiving, desires for external validation, and areas where boundaries have been compromised. The shock is in recognizing that the lessons were never about them alone. They are about your own journey towards self-realization and empowerment. As the truth unfolds, you are compelled to make conscious choices. You learn when to engage, when to withdraw, and when to assert boundaries. You realize that your energy is sacred, your presence is powerful, and your attention is not to be taken for granted. The narcissist's influence wanes not through confrontation, argument, or coercion, but through the quiet assertion of your own integrity. The shock of this realization is profound. The world has conditioned you to believe that influence requires effort, yet here you discover that absence, clarity, and self-respect wield the greatest power. Ultimately, the truth that shocks those meant for a narcissist's life is liberating. You see that the intensity, the manipulation, and the cycles of charm and control were never meant to diminish you, but to awaken you. They were designed to illuminate your strengths, clarify your boundaries, and reveal the sacredness of your energy. You come to understand that your journey was never about fixing the narcissist, sustaining their illusions, or sacrificing your vitality. It was about recognizing your own power, asserting your presence, and mastering the art of conscious living. The final shock and the ultimate liberation is realizing that the narcissist's life, with all its intensity and complexity, has been a reflection of your own capacity for awareness, patience, and discernment. Their patterns, manipulations, and illusions become a canvas on which you learn the profound art of self-mastery. Your gifts are affirmed, your boundaries clarified, and your energy preserved. What was once shocking becomes illuminating. What was once painful becomes transformative. And the life that seemed so disorienting becomes a powerful teacher of truth, presence, and self-respect. Being meant for a narcissist's life is a crucible. It is a journey that challenges, awakens, and transforms. The shock is the initial gift, a call to awareness, a confrontation with reality, and an awakening to the sacredness of energy, presence, and self-respect. And in embracing this truth, you emerge stronger, wiser, and more aligned with the principles of conscious living. You discover that the life that once shocked you was never a trap, but a path to mastery, a journey that reveals the luminous, unshakable self that has always been within. There comes a moment in the journey of anyone drawn into a narcissist's life when the shock of truth crystallizes into clarity. It is a quiet moment, often unnoticed by the outside world, yet it resonates deeply within your being. It is the moment when you see the intricate threads of energy, attention, and manipulation laid bare. You recognize that the intensity, charm, and turbulence you have experienced were not random, they were intentional. Life's way of revealing the structures, dependencies, and lessons inherent in this path. When you are meant for a narcissist life, this revelation is both shocking and awakening, for it exposes the hidden mechanics of influence and illuminates the depth of your own consciousness. The narcissist world is one of illusions. Their presence is commanding, their energy magnetic, and their personality captivating. At first, their attention feels like validation, their care seems genuine, and their charm feels almost sacred. You are drawn in naturally because your energy resonates with theirs. Your sensitivity aligns with their subtle cues, and your empathy responds to the nuanced signals they present. In this phase, the truth remains obscured. The power dynamic is skewed, the reciprocity absent, and the foundation unstable. Yet the energy between you feels intense, meaningful, and almost inevitable, as if life itself conspired to place you in this orbit. As the connection deepens, the patterns of influence become apparent. The narcissist's validation is conditional, their care strategic, and their attention selective. You begin to notice cycles of praise and withdrawal, warmth and coldness, engagement and absence. These cycles are not random. They are mechanisms designed to sustain their sense of control, to perpetuate their illusion of importance, and to ensure that your energy continues to flow toward them. The shock comes when you perceive this clearly, realizing that the attention you once cherished was contingent upon compliance, the affection you received was calculated, and the connection you valued was structured to feed another's ego rather than to nurture mutual growth. Being meant for a narcissist's life is not merely an external experience, it is an internal awakening. You are forced to confront patterns within yourself. Your desire for approval, your tolerance for imbalance, your inclination to overgive, and your capacity to absorb energy without immediate reciprocity. The narcissist acts as a mirror, reflecting the areas where your boundaries have been undefined, your awareness dormant, and your presence unprotected. The shock is profound because it is not only about recognizing the narcissist's patterns, but also about acknowledging your own role in sustaining the dynamic. Your gifts, while extraordinary, have been both essential and vulnerable, empowering yet susceptible to exploitation. One of the most startling truths in this path is the realization that the narcissist's power is borrowed. The dominance, confidence, and control they project are sustained by your attention, energy, and engagement. Without your presence, the facade begins to crumble. Their influence is conditional, fragile, and dependent upon external validation. This is a truth that often shocks those caught in such dynamics. The person who seemed invincible, magnetic, and commanding is, at the core, dependent on the very energy you provide. Your presence is not only vital to them, it is the sustaining force behind the entire construct of their identity. The awakening comes in waves. Initially, you may feel confusion, guilt, or self-doubt. You question your perceptions, wondering if you are overreacting or misinterpreting the signals. You may try to accommodate, to reconcile, or to bridge the gaps in understanding. Yet over time, clarity emerges. You begin to recognize that the cycles, manipulations, and inconsistencies are not your responsibility to fix. You see that your energy is sacred, your attention valuable, and your presence not a commodity to be exploited. This realization, while liberating, carries with it a profound shock, the depth of dependency you had unknowingly sustained, and the invisible influence you had been providing. Being meant for a narcissist's life is a crucible of self-mastery. It teaches the value of boundaries, the sacredness of energy, and the necessity of conscious awareness. You learn that presence is power, withdrawal is strength, and discernment is essential. The narcissist, while often unaware of their own fragility, becomes a catalyst for your growth. They push you to see yourself clearly, to define what is acceptable, and to cultivate an inner authority that is unshakable. The shock lies in the intensity of this process, the subtlety of the lessons, and the revelation that the journey is not about controlling them, but about mastering yourself. This path also illuminates the profound law of energy. What is given freely and honored sustains. What is taken for granted or exploited collapses under its own weight. When you begin to assert your boundaries, consciously manage your energy, or withdraw your presence, the narcissist experiences disruption, confusion, and even subtle unraveling. This is not retribution, it is the natural consequence of imbalanced dynamics. The shock is not in the act itself, but in witnessing how your own integrity and clarity wield influence far greater than confrontation, argument, or effort. You discover that the true power of presence lies in the conscious stewardship of your energy, not in attempting to change or control another. Another profound awakening emerges as you recognize the sacredness of your own discernment. The path with a narcissist teaches you to perceive patterns, detect subtleties, and navigate human behavior with clarity. The shock comes from realizing how deeply you can observe, understand, and respond without losing your essence. You discover the strength in noticing manipulation, yet choosing not to participate. You learn that disengagement is not weakness, that boundaries are not limitations, and that absence, when necessary, is a potent form of assertion. This is the essence of being meant for such a life. The ultimate teaching is mastery, not over another, but over oneself. In this journey, empathy is both tested and refined. Your ability to feel deeply, understand intuitively, and respond compassionately becomes the axis around which the lessons revolve. Yet the narcissist's presence also challenges your generosity, patience, and resilience. You are forced to distinguish between care that nurtures and care that depletes, between presence that sustains and presence that is exploited. The shock is in this revelation. The qualities that make you exceptional are also the qualities most at risk in such dynamics. Your awakening lies in protecting them, preserving them, and using them consciously, rather than allowing them to be consumed unconsciously. Ultimately, being meant for a narcissist's life is both challenging and illuminating. The shock lies in the intensity of the experience, the cycles of charm and withdrawal, and the realization of dependency, both yours and theirs. Yet within this shock resides profound wisdom. Clarity emerges from confusion, mastery arises from challenge, and liberation is born from presence, discernment, and the conscious management of energy. The narcissist's life becomes a mirror, the path a teacher, and the shock a catalyst for awakening. The final revelation and the ultimate lesson is that the life you have been given is never meant to diminish you. It is meant to awaken you, to teach you, and to illuminate the sacredness of your energy, the strength of your boundaries, and the power of conscious presence. The shock transforms into understanding, and the intensity of the journey becomes the foundation for liberation. You see that the narcissist's patterns, manipulations, and illusions were never about your inadequacy, but about the hidden structures of energy, influence, and awareness that shape human interaction. By embracing this truth, you step into a life of mastery. You recognize your own power, honor your presence, and cultivate discernment that transcends manipulation. The shock of the journey becomes a profound teacher, revealing the luminous, resilient self that was always within. And in this clarity, you see the ultimate truth. Being meant for a narcissist's life was never a sentence, never a punishment, and never a limitation. It was a path, sacred in its lessons, transformative in its challenges, and illuminating in its revelations. A journey designed to awaken the unshakable strength, presence, and wisdom within you. The culmination of any journey, especially one as profound and challenging as being meant for a narcissist's life, is the revelation of truth, the unveiling of wisdom that is both shocking and liberating. It is a moment of clarity, a quiet yet profound understanding that all of the pain, confusion, and intensity you experienced was never arbitrary. It was orchestrated, with precision, by the invisible forces of life to awaken your consciousness, illuminate your boundaries, and reveal the latent power that lies within you. This final keynote is not simply a reflection on the past, it is an invitation to understand the depth of your journey, embrace your mastery, and honor the unshakable self that has emerged through the challenges you faced. From the beginning, the narcissist presents a complex puzzle. They are magnetic, compelling, and captivating. Their attention feels like validation, their care seems thoughtful, and their presence appears essential. Yet beneath the surface, the dynamics are intricate, subtle, and often manipulative. Being drawn into their life is not a matter of weakness or poor judgment. It is a reflection of your sensitivity, empathy, and capacity for deep connection. You were meant to encounter this life because it would illuminate the hidden dimensions of your energy, reveal the nuances of influence, and challenge the assumptions you held about love, trust, and reciprocity. The shock of this truth is profound, for it forces a confrontation with reality that is as enlightening as it is unsettling. At first, the interactions feel intoxicating. You are drawn to the narcissist's energy, responding naturally to the subtle cues of validation, admiration, and engagement. Your gifts, patience, empathy, discernment, and awareness are both essential and vulnerable. The narcissist's charm, their strategic attention, and their apparent understanding awaken parts of you that had been dormant, unrecognized, or unexplored. Yet, with time, the cycles of control, withdrawal, and manipulation become clear. The initial fascination fades into the subtle awareness of imbalance. This is the moment when the first shock emerges, the realization that the connection, while compelling, is not reciprocal, and the energy you contribute is not always honored. The second layer of revelation is the recognition of your own role in sustaining this dynamic. You begin to see how your generosity, empathy, and willingness to engage have been essential to the narcissist's sense of identity and control. It is not a matter of blame, but a matter of awareness. You understand that the very qualities that make you exceptional, your sensitivity, your insight, and your capacity to nurture, also make you the vessel through which the narcissist's illusions are maintained. This realization is both humbling and empowering. Humbling, because it exposes the invisible patterns of energy exchange. Empowering, because it shows that mastery lies not in changing them, but in reclaiming your own presence and energy. The true shock, the revelation that pierces deeply, is the understanding of dependency and borrowed power. The narcissist's sense of control, confidence, and dominance is largely sustained by your engagement. Their perception of strength, their projection of influence, and even their apparent success are contingent upon your presence. Without your energy, your attention, and your emotional labor, the structures they rely upon begin to fracture. This is not a form of punishment. It is simply the natural consequence of imbalance. The realization that your power resides not in confrontation, but in conscious withdrawal and presence, is a transformative shock, a lesson in energy that reshapes your understanding of influence, connection, and self-respect. As you continue to navigate this path, the cycles of charm, withdrawal, and manipulation become clearer. Yet they no longer dictate your response. You cultivate discernment, clarity, and the ability to act with intention rather than reaction. The narcissist's life becomes a mirror, reflecting both their patterns and your potential for mastery. You learn that presence can influence without effort, boundaries can command respect without confrontation, and conscious withdrawal can dismantle illusions without aggression. The shock lies not only in the narcissist's fragility, but in the revelation of your own power, resilience, and capacity for conscious living. Another profound awakening emerges in the realization of sacredness. Sacredness of energy, attention, and presence. You begin to see that your empathy is a gift, not an obligation. Your attention is a resource, not a tool for manipulation. Your care is sacred, not exploitable. The narcissist's cycles of need, charm, and withdrawal challenge these principles, revealing where your boundaries may have been porous or undefined. The shock is not simply in recognizing manipulation, but in understanding the profound importance of protecting what is sacred within yourself. The awakening is in choosing presence consciously, engagement intentionally, and boundaries definitively. This journey also exposes a deeper truth about the nature of love and connection. You see that what is often presented as affection, care, or intimacy can be conditional, strategic, and transactional. The narcissist's love is frequently measured, contingent upon compliance, and dependent on the energy they extract from you. This realization is shocking because it challenges deeply held beliefs about relationships, trust, and mutuality. Yet, once recognized, it becomes a source of empowerment. You learn to distinguish between connection that nourishes and connection that depletes, between presence that strengthens and presence that is exploited. In this discernment, mastery and liberation are born. The path with a narcissist also illuminates the importance of conscious absence. When you withdraw, assert boundaries, or disengage from cycles of manipulation, the narcissist experiences disruption, confusion, and vulnerability. Their borrowed power, long sustained by your engagement, begins to unravel. This is the ultimate shock. The realization that the true force does not lie in argument, persuasion, or confrontation, but in the quiet, deliberate assertion of integrity, energy, and presence. Your absence, your clarity, and your self-respect become instruments of awakening, both for you and indirectly for them. Being meant for a narcissist's life is a crucible for self-mastery. It teaches the value of discernment, the sanctity of boundaries, and the power of presence. It challenges your patience, tests your empathy, and exposes vulnerabilities you may have previously overlooked. And yet, within this challenge lies the opportunity for profound transformation. The shock that initially feels destabilizing becomes the catalyst for awakening, the mirror for self-awareness, and the teacher of truths that are subtle, yet enduring. As the journey culminates, the final truth becomes undeniable. The narcissist patterns, manipulations, and illusions were never about your inadequacy. They were designed to illuminate your strengths, awaken your discernment, and highlight the sacredness of your energy. The shock transforms into clarity. Confusion gives way to understanding, and what once seemed painful becomes a profound source of empowerment. The lessons of presence, boundaries, and conscious withdrawal converge into mastery, the mastery of yourself, your energy, and your engagement with the world. Ultimately, being meant for a narcissist's life is both shocking and liberating. The experience teaches that your power lies not in controlling another, but in asserting your own energy and presence. It reveals that your gifts, empathy, patience, insight, and discernment are sacred, powerful, and essential. It uncovers the fragility of borrowed influence, the limitations of manipulation, and the transformative power of conscious living. And in this revelation, the shock fades into wisdom, leaving a self that is unshakable, luminous, and fully awakened. The final lesson is profound. Life orchestrates experiences not to diminish you, but to awaken you. Being meant for a narcissist's life was never a sentence. It was a path, challenging, intense, and transformative. It was designed to illuminate your energy, clarify your boundaries, and reveal the depth of your power. And as the shock of truth settles into understanding, you emerge not only liberated but profoundly aligned with your highest self. The journey, once bewildering, becomes the teacher. The challenges, once painful, become the forge of mastery, and the life that once shocked you becomes the path through which your unshakable, radiant self is revealed.